There's a lot of speculation that's offshore and out of reach of our negotiators and our regulators. This bill will make those foreign trades in American oil and gasoline futures subject to reporting requirements so we can have a paper trail and keep track of what's going on. The bill would also require the Commodity Futures Trading Commission to increase the margin requirement for oil trades. The margin requirement is currently set by exchanges themselves, kind of like the fox guarding the hen house. And they have set the requirement so low, 5 to 7%, that speculators can buy an enormous amount of oil with only a small amount of cash. And this has caused a tremendous amount of volatility in the price of oil and gas. Remember what the CEO of the oil company said? He said, oh, no, this shouldn't be priced at over $100 a barrel. It should be at 55. So where's all this money going? Well, I can tell you where it's going. It's going to build 5-star hotels in the middle of the desert somewhere. We've been investing in the sultans of Saudi Arabia instead of the farmers and the workers in this country, where we should be developing a long-term energy policy. A final area where we can take immediate action is in our dealings with the OPEC nations. OPEC is a cartel of oil-producing countries that meet and decide how much oil to produce and thereby control prices. They make no pretense of having a free market system. They don't obey the laws of supply and demand. They gather together and they set production, which determines prices. As a former prosecutor, I call that kind of behavior collusion, and it is illegal in this country. But the members of OPEC are foreign governments, and so far they have gotten away with it. As oil exporting nations, the members of OPEC could provide us with some relief. They have the spare capacity to increase their production of oil and ease the pain being felt by people in this country. But OPEC recently met and decided not to increase production, at least until the fall after the summer driving season, when prices always rise. Not only that, Saudi Arabia has actually decreased production since 2005. Think about it. Our country spends $600,000 every minute on imported oil. That's money leaving the pockets of American consumers, American drivers, going into the coffers of foreign countries. By refusing to step up production, OPEC nations are saying, we don't think prices are high enough yet. Let's let them go higher. Well, I think they are. This bill that was blocked by the other side is going to put a stop to some of this OPEC price setting by allowing the Attorney General to bring enforcement actions against foreign governments that are engaging in collusion and hold them to the same standards of fair dealing that we already have in place in this country. So those are some short-term ideas, in addition to one we were able to pass, which was to temporarily halt putting oil into the strategic petroleum reserves when the price is so high. We got that done, but these other things are even more important, to do something about what is called the gambling hall when it comes to oil speculation, to do something about price gouging, to do something about the OPEC nations. These are short-term things that are doable, that the people in my state that are lining up in those Costco lines want to see. But once again, we were blocked by the other side. Our people are running on empty. They're tired of this. And the other side is running on empty when it comes to ideas. We need a bold new future, long-term solutions. American consumers also expect that their corporations should invest sensibly for the long-term interests of our country and our economy. That's what works. That's how business works. But here's what's going on here. This Congress, in the past few years, before I got here, gave a bunch of giveaways to the oil companies. I don't know, $17 billion, something like that. So we, the people, have a say in what these oil companies do when we're giving them a bunch of tax giveaways. The Consumer First Energy Act imposes a windfall profits tax on oil companies. It doesn't just say, no, every oil company gets a windfall profits tax. No, we could say that, given that they raked in $36 billion, the big oil companies, in just the 3 months of this year, the first 3 months. But what it says is, if you invest in renewables and you do what you're supposed to do, given that you've gotten these subsidies, and you invest in your refining capacity, and you do things like that, well, then you won't have this windfall profits tax. But if you don't do that, and you're taking the taxpayers' money, and you're raking in the bucks, and the prices are getting jacked up, well, then you're going to get a windfall profits tax. Why should these big companies be getting $36 billion in the first 3 months, make no progress in terms of a long-term energy policy, and then the consumers are paying over $4 a gallon at the tank? Makes no sense. Oil company profits since this administration took office are over $600 billion and counting. Now, you could make an argument that high profits, if this money was being used to develop the resources, but it's not. Time and time again, we keep going backwards and not forwards. So what this provision says is, if you take your profits that you get from American families and businesses and you reinvest them in the country's energy future, that's fine. If you don't, we're going to take a portion of your money and invest it in the farmers and the workers of the Midwest instead of the oil cartels of the Mideast. And we know what we need for a long-term energy policy. We need investment in hybrids, electric cars. We're not that far. The Chevy Nova in 2 years is going to give us 30 to 40 miles by just plugging it in, and then it converts over to fuels. We have great advancements in biofuels, something the presiding officer and I have worked on very hard, to cellulosic ethanol, going even beyond corn-based ethanol. So we look at getting energy from switchgrass and prairie grass and algae and all kinds of biomass and residue from logging. These are all in our future. But we have to actually put those incentives in place so that the investment follows. We have tried. We have done some things. But we need a bold energy direction in this country. And that's what this bill was about. The other side blocked. They're running on empty with ideas, and the American consumers are running on empty with their tanks. When American families are facing the kind of economic squeeze that they are facing today, they expect action from our government. They expect that our government will protect their interests to make sure that the markets are fair and honest and transparent. They expect that their government is going to watch out for them, not for the oil companies. We've proposed legislation that would do these things. It would give the government the tools to protect consumers in the short term, and it would begin to set our country on a smart, sustainable course for the long term toward energy independence. You can put your head in the sand and pretend it's not happening, or you can look for a new future. Does that involve, as our friends on the other side have been saying, some increased production in our country? Of course it does. We live in Minnesota, right next to North Dakota, where we're seeing a discovery of more oil. That's a piece of this. That's a piece of it. But the other piece of this is looking to the future with renewables and biofuels and new kinds of technologies. And if we just keep going the old way and giving that $17 billion to the oil companies and not investing in a new future, we're going to end up even worse where we are now, and that is running on empty. It shouldn't take $4 a gallon gasoline to bring us to the brink of action on sensible market reforms and a smart long-term energy policy. But that's where we are. That's where we are. It is time to act. I implore my colleagues on the other side to not filibuster this bill. We must move ahead, and we must do something for the American people. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.